Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Sloan, and I've been a therapist for 20 years now. So I've worked with thousands of clients. And at this point, the one thing that everybody seems to have in common is they want better communication with their partners. We all want to feel safe, secure, and loved by our partners. Now, I've compiled a list of 10 suggestions that you can start using today to communicate better with your partner. And why don't you save this and share it with your partner and say something like, hey, let's start working on some of these. And let me know what other topics you're interested in, and I'd be glad to offer more tips. Thanks for watching. Please help me out and hit subscribe. And today, number 1 is to avoid threatening the relationship when you're in an argument. So you want to avoid saying things that make it seem like the relationship could end. So when you're in an argument, avoid saying things like, this relationship just isn't working out for me, or I should just leave, or we should end this now. So threatening the relationship creates a dynamic where your partner will feel emotionally unsafe, and they'll be hesitant to bring up any sort of issue out of fear that the relationship might be at risk. And you want your partner to know that they can feel safe to come and discuss anything with you, even if it's a difficult topic, and you're not going to be threatening to end the relationship if you get angry about an issue. But if you really do want to end the relationship, then bring that up at a time when you aren't in the middle of a fight and you're not just using it as a threat. Communication tip number 2, don't say anything that you're going to need to apologize for saying later. You know, it really sucks after an argument when you're having to say something like, sorry, I called you a lazy a-hole last night. I really didn't mean it. I was just mad. So when you're in an argument, avoid name calling and shaming. You can attack the problem without attacking the person. You can learn to complain without criticizing. And this doesn't come natural to most of us because we have a fight-flight response that kicks in and we just want to defend our ego. But you can learn how to have a disagreement in a way that's not aggressive. You can learn how to say, there's always so many dishes, can you please help me? Instead of saying, you never help me with the dishes. What, are you blind? Can't you see all these dishes? And instead of saying, you never listen to me, you're always glued to your phone, you can say something like, hey, I'd really like more connection with you. I'm feeling disconnected. And watch your tone, okay, when you say these things. Now go practice, review some of these strategies in your head and think about what you're going to say before you actually say it. Communication tip number 3, avoid starting sentences with the word you. Now think about it. When your partner comes at you starting a sentence with the word you, it makes us automatically want to defend ourselves, right? A wall immediately goes up, and the word you is usually followed by the words always or never, right? So you never consider me. You always ignore me. So stop doing this, okay? You want to start your sentences with I or we. You does not work. You can say, I want more connection with you. Can we have some downtime tonight and put our phones away? Our house has gotten super messy. Can we come up with a chore list? Communicating this way takes practice. So just by starting in your head and then telling your partner that you're working on this too, so that maybe you can work on it together. You can even tag them in this video and say, hey, let's start trying to talk to each other like this. I hope this has been helpful. Communication tip number 4, avoid being passive-aggressive. Now, a lot of people are using passive-aggressive communication and don't even realize it. So I want to give you some examples of passive-aggressive communication. This can be the silent treatment. For example, if you're mad at your partner about something, instead of just telling them you're angry, maybe you ignore their text messages all day, or don't answer the phone when they call, or you cancel plans with them. So you might say everything's fine when it's obviously not fine. Passive aggressiveness is an indirect way of expressing anger. It can be procrastinating on a task that needs to be done just because you know it's going to get under your partner's skin and you're trying to prove a point without your partner even knowing what's going on with you. It can also be making sly comments or jokes that offer that little jab. Now, I must admit, this is the one I struggle with the most, and if my wife is watching, I just want to say thank you for being patient with me, and I'm still working on this. Communication tip number 5, and this one can dramatically change your relationship. This can make or break your relationship, and we have evidence to prove it. Couples who pay attention to what we call bids for attention are much more likely to stay together. So a bid for attention is any attempt from one partner to the other for attention, affection, or any other positive connection. So to make it simple, pay attention to what your partner says and respond to it. If they say, "Look at this adorable picture of this puppy," you actually stop what you're doing and you look at it. If they say, "What do you think of these pants?" you actually look up from your phone and comment on the pants. If they say, "My mom really stressed me out today," you say, "What happened?" Now, John Gottman, a marriage expert, says there needs to be a 5-to-1 ratio for a relationship to stay healthy. So for every one time you miss a bid for connection, you need 5 other times to make up for that. So bottom line, lean into the relationship and pay attention. Put up your phone, listen, and respond. If you miss too many bids for connection, your partner will feel lonely, isolated, and emotionally disengaged, which usually leads to a breakup. Communication tip number 6. Ask yourself this question. At the end of an argument, would I rather be right or feel good about myself? Now, just think about it. A lot of times we can prove that we're right about something, but in the meantime, we've made the other person feel terrible about themselves. We've made them feel stupid for having a different perspective, and sometimes, just for our own sanity, we need to be okay with agreeing to disagree. In conflict, it's not about who's right or wrong. It's about attempting to see somebody else's perspective. So ask questions out of curiosity about the other person's perspective. You can say, that's not the way I see it. I'm curious about how you came to that conclusion. In a relationship, we have to give up this idea of needing to be right. Communication tip number 7. Try to avoid using the words always or never. Now, this is one I'm definitely still working on. As soon as you use the words always or never, your partner will immediately start to think of exceptions. We never spend any time together. Well, actually, we just spent all of Saturday night together. You're always on your phone. Well, actually, this is the first time I've been on my phone all day. So instead, start to just say what you need. You can say something like, I'd like to spend more time with you. Or, can we put our phones away while we're eating dinner? There's something I really want to tell you. So when we approach conflict with what we call a gentle startup, you're much more likely to get what you need. And that's the whole point, right? Is to just get what you need. Communication tip number 8. Ask yourself this question. Am I really listening to my partner when they're talking, or am I just waiting for my turn to talk? So one of the biggest communication problems is that we do not listen to try to understand people. We listen to reply. And a lot of times we aren't even listening to everything they're saying because we're just preparing our own little speech in our own mind. So let's say that my wife is wanting to talk to me about doing more of the cooking for our family, and she's had a long day and she's in a bad mood and keeps complaining about having to do all the cooking. I could interrupt her to defend myself and say, well, I've had a long day too, and I make the kids' lunches every day. Or I could just let her vent and then pause and say something like, I bet you're so exhausted and it sounds like you're wanting me to cook more in the evenings. Is that what you're saying? So you'll get 2 very different outcomes with these 2 different responses. And now this is not easy to do, especially if we're feeling criticized, but let your partner know you want to start practicing this. It takes a little bit of pushing the ego aside and also soothing yourself in the moment. But it does get easier if you can learn how to do this. And it's a way to avoid making something into a bigger argument. Communication tip number 9. If something is really important to your partner, you have to make it important to you too. Now, I'm not talking about having to love a hobby that your partner loves or a TV show. I'm referring to the cohabitation issues. For instance, my wife is really, really fanatical about making sure all the lights are out in rooms that we aren't in. And she doesn't like for there to be any dishes in the sink overnight because she likes to wake up to a clean kitchen. And I'm aware of these few pet peeves, so I do go out of my way to make sure these things get accomplished. Now, I'm not perfect by any means, but it sure beats having the attitude of, well, I don't care about that, and I think that's stupid. And in return, I get the same respect. It's a win-win situation. So keep this in mind. If something is really important to your partner, then make it important to you too. Communication tip number 10, and this is the last one in this series. Now, my wife and I learned this one in our couples therapy session. When you're in conflict with your partner, you'll need to be aware of your own anger that might surface and try to slow things down. Think of anger as like a stoplight with green, yellow, and red. So when your anger is between level 1 and 4, you're in the green, and it's okay to keep talking. When your anger is between levels 5 and 7, you're in the yellow, and you can proceed with caution. So you can talk, but you'll have to filter your words carefully and take pauses. And if your anger is between levels 8 to 10, you're in the red, and you might need to just stop and take a break. Once you're in the red, it's best to just stop talking, or you might end up saying something that makes things worse. So you'll give yourself some time to get back into the green zone before proceeding with the conversation.